My name is Zenobia Renee Washington. I am 61 years old today, but the story I'm about to tell you began 4 years ago, when I was still 57 and still believed a mother's love was bulletproof. For 35 years, I lived in the same red brick building on Lucille Avenue in Atlanta's West End. The top floor was my apartment, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, balcony overflowing with red geraniums and bougainvillea I watered every morning before the sun got too hot. Downstairs was my tailoring shop, Zenobia's Stitches and Dreams, where I turned $40 worth of fabric into $4,000 wedding gowns for brides who wanted to look like royalty on a teacher's salary. People always told me I had golden hands. Truth is, I had tired hands, hands that sewed until 4 in the morning, so my only child, Orion, could go to Morehouse College without a single student loan. Hands that hemmed prom dresses while I cried over overdue light bills. Hands that once belonged to my grandmother, then my mother, then me. 3 generations of black women who stitched survival into every seam, every dart, every invisible zipper. Orion grew up in that shop. He used to fall asleep under my cutting table while I finished last-minute alterations, his little head resting on bolts of satin like they were pillows. When he was 8, he wrote me a Mother's Day card in purple crayon that said, "Mama, you are my hero. When I grow up, I'm going to buy you a castle, and you'll never have to sew again." I kept that card taped inside the cash register drawer for 25 years. I still have it. He was a good boy, Strata student, captain of the debate team at Mays High School, helped Miss Lorraine across the street carry her groceries every Sunday after church. He would come home smelling like fried chicken and praise, eat 2 plates of my smothered chicken and rice, kiss my cheek, and say, "Everything I am is because of you, Mama." I believed him with every cell in my body. I believed a son's love was the one thing in this world that could never be taken from you. Then he graduated Morehouse with honors, got a job in commercial real estate, started wearing the custom suits I tailored for him, and one Tuesday evening he sat at my little kitchen table and said, "Mama, I met somebody special. Her name is Clementina." That was the first time I felt the ground shift under me. Clementina Vance was beautiful in the way only untouched money can make you beautiful. Skin like warm honey, hair that fell in perfect waves even when it was humid, a smile that cost more in orthodontics than my yearly rent. She was the only child of Serafina and Reginald Vance, owners of a chain of hardware superstores everybody in Atlanta swore was doing numbers. Serafina ran Buckhead's social scene like a 5-star general. Reginald spent most evenings drunk in a leather chair watching golf reruns on a television the size of my entire shop. The first time, Orion brought me to their mansion on West Pace's Ferry Road. I wore the navy silk dress I had made for the governor's wife's daughter the year before. I pressed my hair bone straight, put on my mother's pearl earrings, and carried a sweet potato pie I'd baked at 3 a.m. because that's what mamas do. Serafina opened the door in cream silk palazzo pants and diamonds at 4 in the afternoon. She greeted me with 2 air kisses that floated an inch from my cheeks and said, "Miss Zenobia, how quaint." She said my name like it tasted strange in her mouth, like it needed a title to be allowed past the threshold. Dinner was 7 courses served by a silent housekeeper Serafina never once looked in the eye. The conversation floated above my head, country club gossip, upcoming trips to Hilton Head, the new Mercedes Reginald simply had to have because one can't drive just anything. When I mentioned my shop, Serafina gave a thin smile and said, "How charming. A little hobby to keep busy, I suppose." Orion laughed along like it was the funniest thing he'd heard all week. That night in the car on the way home he squeezed my hand and said, "They loved you, Mama." I stared out the window at mansions sliding past like ships in the dark and heard a small, quiet voice whisper, "He's lying." But I told the voice to hush. A mother wants to believe her child more than she wants oxygen. The visits that used to be every Sunday after church turned into every other Sunday, then once a month, then only when he needed something. "Sorry, Mama. Clementina's parents invited us to the lake house." "Sorry, Mama. Serafina got us tickets to the Fox Theater." "Sorry, Mama. Wedding planning is crazy." Wedding planning that never once included me. I found out about the $40,000 engagement party from Instagram photos I wasn't tagged in. I found out about the rehearsal dinner at Canoe from a thank you card that arrived at my shop by mistake. Every time I gently asked Orion why I wasn't invited, he gave me the same tired smile and said, "It was small. Mama last minute didn't want to bother you." Bother me as if 33 years of motherhood, 33 years of scraped knees and parent-teacher conferences and sewing until my eyes crossed, was suddenly a bother. One night he called and asked for $2,000 just until next paycheck. I promise. I sent it from the money I had saved for a new roof on the building. He never paid it back. I never asked. Because that's what mothers do. We give until we're hollow. Then we give some more. Believing one day the scales will balance. Then came the Tuesday, everything shattered. It was a slow day in the shop. I was finishing the hem on a gala gown for Mrs. Judge Harriet Benson when the bell jingled and a delivery kid in a blue cap handed me a thick manila envelope. No return address. Just my name written in neat black ink. I locked the door, flipped the sign to closed, sat at my cutting table, and opened it. Photographs spilled out like poison. The first one, Orion and Serafina leaving Justin's restaurant on Peachtree, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. Second, Orion opening the passenger door of her white Range Rover in the Ritz-Carlton parking garage, their faces inches apart, her laughing up at him like a teenager. Third, Orion kissing her neck in an elevator, her eyes closed, diamonds flashing under fluorescent lights. Fourth, the one that made the room spin, them on a midtown balcony at night, city lights behind them, Orion hugging her from behind, chin on her shoulder, both of them smiling like they'd just discovered the secret to happiness and it lived. Between her sheets, I ran to the tiny bathroom in the back of the shop and vomited until there was nothing left but bile and heartbreak. When I could stand again, I washed my face, looked at myself in the cracked mirror, and made a decision. I called a private investigator a client had used when her preacher husband got caught with the choir director. His name was Booker Hughes. Calm voice, kind eyes, looked like somebody's favorite uncle who just happened to know how to hack bank accounts. We met 3 days later in a Decatur coffee shop far from Buckhead eyes. He slid a thick folder across the table and said, "Take a deep breath, Miss Washington. You're not ready for this." I thought I was. I was wrong. Booker's report was clinical, merciless. Complete. Serafina had been transferring Orion money for 19 months. 10,000 here, 20,000 there. One transfer of 50,000 the exact week he bought Clementina's 3-carat diamond. A luxury midtown apartment leased to a shell company, rent paid every month from Serafina's personal checking account. Hotel logs, St. Regis, Four Seasons, Lowe's, Ritz, always booked in her name. Security footage showing both of them entering and leaving together. And the audio. Booker had planted a legal gray area microphone in the midtown apartment. He pressed play, and I heard my own child's voice, thin and scared. What if Clementina finds out about us? Serafina's answer came velvet and venom. She won't, darling. Clementina only sees what I tell her to see. After the wedding we wait a year, maybe 2. Then accidents happen. Car wrecks, overdoses, falls downstairs. The trust becomes yours. $5 million, baby. And then it's just you and me. No more hiding. No more pretending. A long silence. Then the unmistakable sounds of kissing. Well, you know what sounds. Booker stopped the recording. I couldn't breathe, because the final piece of the puzzle was this. The Vance family empire was smoke and mirrors. Reginald was bankrupt, 3 mortgages on the mansion, creditors circling like vultures. The only real money was Clementina's trust fund from her late maternal grandmother. $5 million in stocks, bonds, and Atlanta real estate, locked until the day Clementina said I do. And if something happened to her after the wedding, every single cent rolled straight to her spouse. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning murder for money. And my son, my baby, the boy who once cried when we ran over a squirrel, had whispered, "Okay." I sat in that coffee shop with Booker's folder in my lap and realized I had exactly 2 choices. Call the police and send my only child to prison for conspiracy to commit murder, or find another way. I chose the other way. I called Cornelius Estrada, Clementina's grandfather. The man who had actually built the hardware empire. Reginald was currently bankrupting, 82 years old, widower, still sharp as a tack, still drove himself to Krispy Kreme every Friday mornings. I had met him once at a family lunch I'd barely been invited to. He sat next to me, looked at my tired hands, and said, "You work with these like I did when I started. I like you, Zenobia." He gave me his personal cell number and said, "If you ever need anything, you call." I called. We met at his Craftsman bungalow in Inman Park. No butler, no crystal chandelier. Just strong coffee and a plate of hot glazed donuts he'd picked up himself. I laid everything on his kitchen table. The photographs, the bank records, the hotel logs, the audio. He listened without interrupting. When the recording finished he was quiet so long, I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then he spoke. voice shaking with rage and grief. My own daughter is planning to murder my granddaughter for money. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes, and asked the question that changed everything. Why are you bringing this to me instead of the police? I told him the truth, because if I go to the police, my son goes to prison, and no matter what he's done, no matter how far he's fallen, I can't be the mother who puts her child in a cage. Cornelius studied me for a long time. Then he nodded once, slow and heavy. You're a better mother than mine ever was, Zenobia. Here's what we're going to do. The plan was surgical, brutal, and perfect. I would attend the wedding and behave like the perfect invisible mother the groom. The moment Serafina or Orion showed their true colors in public, I would text Cornelius 3 words. It is time. Cornelius would arrive with 2 uniformed officers, 3 attorneys, private security, and an emergency custody order he'd already had drawn up. He would take Clementina out of that ballroom that night, freeze the trust, and file criminal charges against Serafina. The marriage would be annulled before the cake was cut, legally, as if it never happened. But Zenobia, he warned, holding both my hands in his old, spotted ones, when this explodes, your son will hate you. The newspapers, the blogs, the gossip, they'll paint you as the villain. You will lose him, maybe forever. Are you sure? I thought of Orion at 5 years old, crying on the porch because his daddy left without saying goodbye. I thought of Orion at 12, promising me a castle. I thought of Orion at 28, planning to murder an innocent girl for money. I looked Cornelius in the eye and said, I'm sure. The wedding was 6 weeks away. I spent those weeks sewing Clementina's wedding gown alterations for free, because Serafina had insisted on a designer in New York and then complained the hem was wrong. So they brought it to me to fix. I spent those weeks smiling when Orion canceled Sunday dinner again. I spent those weeks practicing in the mirror how to keep my face calm when I wanted to scream. And every night I drank coffee from the same cracked stoneware mug I'd had since Orion was in diapers. And I prayed for strength. The day arrived like any other Saturday in June. Hot, sticky, the kind of Atlanta heat that makes your church dress stick to your back. The ceremony was at Peachtree Christian Church. White roses everywhere, string quartet playing pop. 300 guests who looked at me like I was the help who wandered into the sanctuary by mistake. I wore a simple navy silk dress I'd sewn myself years ago. No hat, no feathers, no competition. I wanted to disappear, but I also wanted them to remember exactly who I was when it all came crashing down. Orion looked perfect in his charcoal tux. Hair lined up sharp, nervous smile that used to melt my heart. For one heartbeat when he passed my pew, I saw my little boy again, and my chest cracked open. Then Serafina shot him that possessive, hungry look from the front row, and the cracks sealed with ice. Clementina floated down the aisle like something out of a fairy tale, veil trailing 10 feet behind her, eyes shining with tears of joy. She had no idea she was walking toward her own death sentence. The vows were beautiful lies. When the priest said you may kiss the bride, the church erupted in applause. I clapped too, because that's what mothers do. The reception was at the St. Regis, grand ballroom dripping in crystal and white orchids, ice sculptures, a 12-piece band, 5-course dinner that costs more than my yearly rent. They sat me at table 19 in the back corner with cousins I didn't know and a great-aunt who spent the whole night complaining about her gout. I watched Serafina float from table to table like a queen, touching shoulders, laughing too loud, owning every inch of the room. I watched Orion gaze at her the way he used to gaze at me when he was small and the world still made sense. Dinner came and went. The band started. First dance. Father-daughter, mother-son. When it was my turn, Orion walked over with that same forced smile he'd been wearing all day. He extended his hand like we were strangers. Dance with me, Mama. I stood. We swayed under the fairy lights, while the singer crooned at last. You look beautiful, Mama, he said, not meeting my eyes. Thank you, baby. You clean up nice yourself. Awkward silence. Then I asked the question I already knew the answer to. Are you happy, Orion? He hesitated half a beat too long. Yes, Mama Clementina's wonderful. We're gonna be real happy. I could feel his heartbeat through his tuxedo jacket, fast, like a trapped bird. I lowered my voice so only he could hear. And Serafina, is she wonderful too? His entire body went rigid. He stopped dancing, looked at me with panic flaring in his eyes. Mama, this isn't the place. When is the place, Orion? After the accident, after Clementina's trust fund is yours and she's in the ground. His face went ash gray. What are you talking about? I know everything. The apartment, the money, the plan. Guests were starting to stare. Clementina was walking over, confused. Serafina appeared like smoke, inserting herself between us. Zenobia, I think it's time for you to leave. You're causing a scene. I laughed, soft and bitter. A scene? Oh, honey, you haven't seen a scene yet. Serafina's eyes narrowed to slits. She turned to the nearest table, picked up a bowl of seafood gumbo still steaming from the kitchen, walked back to me with purpose, and poured it slowly, deliberately. Over my head, I felt the scalding broth burn my scalp. Spices stung my eyes like acid. Thick roux slid down my face. My neck soaked my dress while 300 people gasped. Serafina leaned in, smile venomous, and said loud enough for the head table microphones to catch, "That is exactly what you deserve." The ballroom went dead silent. And then my son crossed his arms and said the words that cut deeper than any burn. "She's right, Mama." Clementina started crying. Someone screamed. Phones came out. I took the linen napkin from my lap, wiped my eyes with every ounce of dignity I had left, and stood. I did not run. I did not cry. I walked to the exit with my back straight, gumbo dripping off me like I'd been baptized in betrayal. But right before I reached the double doors, I took my phone from my clutch, pressed the name I had saved as C. Estrada, and sent 3 words. "It is time." Then I walked out into the Atlanta night, got in my 12-year-old Camry, and drove home with soup cooling in my hair and a strange, cold peace settling in my chest. 40-3 minutes later, Cornelius Estrada walked into that ballroom with 2 uniformed officers, 3 attorneys in $5,000 suits, and an emergency custody order, already signed by a judge who owed him favors from 1979. He took the microphone from the stunned DJ and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this wedding is over. My granddaughter is leaving with me tonight. The marriage is annulled, effective immediately, and Serafina Vance, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." Then he played the recording for the entire room. Serafina screamed that it was fake, that I was jealous, that I'd doctored everything. Orion stood frozen in his tux while guests recorded on their phones. Clementina collapsed into her grandfather's arms sobbing. "Mama, how could you?" The scandal went viral before the last guests left the parking lot. Serafina was arrested that night. Reginald lost the mansion too. Foreclosure 3 weeks later and now lives in a 1-room rental in Decatur. Clementina moved in with Cornelius, started therapy, and is finishing a psychology degree so she can help other women who've been betrayed the way she was. And Orion, 3 weeks after the wedding, he showed up at my apartment at 8 p.m. looking like a ghost. Beard, sunken eyes, suit hanging off him like it belonged to someone else. "Mama," he croaked, "can I come home?" I stood in the doorway and looked at the stranger wearing my son's face. "No, baby," I said. "You need to learn what I learned when your daddy left. You rebuild with your own hands, or you don't rebuild at all." "He," cried. I closed the door. Because sometimes, the most loving thing a mother can do is let her child fall so hard the only way left to look is up. Years have passed. Serafina was sentenced to 12 years without parole. Cornelius visits every Sunday with pastries and coffee, calls me daughter now. Clementina hugs me like I'm blood, and is godmother to the little community center she's opening for survivors. And Orion, 6 months ago a letter came. He's working nights in a warehouse, living in a studio in Norcross, going to therapy 3 times a week, saving every penny to pay back every dollar he ever took from me or Serafina's accounts. He wrote, "I passed your building sometimes. Mama, I don't knock. I just look at your window and keep walking. Because I know I lost the right to ask for anything. But I'm trying to become the man you raised, not the one Serafina bought. One day, if you can stand to look at me again, I'll be waiting. I haven't answered yet, but I will. When I believe he's earned it for himself. Not for my forgiveness, because forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing to stop carrying the weight. So if you're listening, and someone you love has betrayed you, if a child has broken your heart, if you're wondering whether you're strong enough to survive it, you are. I'm living proof. The woman they covered in gumbo and called worthless is still standing, head high, hands steady, heart hold on. One day, when you least expect it, life collects every debt. Not with screaming, not with revenge, but with quiet, unstoppable justice. Thank you for letting me tell you my truth. Tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? Have you ever had to choose dignity over a child who hurt you? I read every single one. And if you want more real-life stories of betrayal, redemption, and mothers who refused to break, hit subscribe because the next one might save your life, too, with love and respect. Zenobia.